The cloud. All right, let's just pause that for a second. Yeah, Chuck. So we are going to be breaking down not only, y'all, for you guys tagging in on this, and you're curious, like, hey, so I saw you guys talking about diets, crash diets, fad diets, why they don't work, but we're going to highlight not only why they don't work, but how we can make some adjustments to it, and especially what we do differently and why a sustainable approach is actually sustainable and some of the variables at play there. But Chuck, even before we got started here, we were looking up some numbers, and some of the numbers that were jumping out were ranging between, you saw 80%, I saw most of them were showing about 95% failure rate when it comes to a diet, fad diet, or crash diet. So maybe let's start with that. And first off, are you surprised? Because I'm not surprised at those numbers.
I'm not surprised at those numbers at all. But before we get into the numbers, let's define what a crash diet is and what a fad diet is. So for me, a crash diet would be, I got to lose 10 pounds this week. I got to lose 20 pounds this week, whatever it is, and immediately cut out all kinds of food and do all kinds of crazy fasting and don't eat properly or get the proper nutrition in our system in order to lose a certain amount of weight in a short period of time. A fad diet for me would be stuff that we're seeing out in the marketplace right now, paleo, keto, all these different things, like out on social media that all these different, people out there are doing, and they push that product on you and you try it. So that to me is the difference between a crash diet and a fad diet. So crash diet, very dangerous. We don't want to be doing that. Fad diet, not successful or sustainable, but a lot of people go out there and try it. Listen, I did keto for like 2 years and I had some moderate success on keto, but it wasn't sustainable. So what's your thought on that, Mike?
Yeah, I think you touched on a key word there. And I think that's actually really important that you touched on the difference between like crash dieting and fad diets, because there is a key aspect. One of the bigger ones that jumps to my mind, I don't know if you remember this, I think Beyonce was one of the ones that kind of blew up this crash diet of like, I want to say it was like cayenne pepper syrup or like honey or maple syrup or something like that, like lemon juice or some variation of that you do that for like 5 or 8 days or something, and you can lose a bunch of weight. And that's to me the epitome of crash diet. Then like you said, looking at the fad diet, that's very much so. And the sustainable word to me was the big one that jumps out there. And again, not being surprised, but I think to your point, the sustainability. And I think even looking at some of these quote unquote fad diets, like if it's sustainable, this is not to throw shade at, if you are finding success with whatever that is, great. But I'm imagining you're not listening to this, you're not watching this, you didn't click on this or want to hear our thoughts if you are finding success with whatever that diet or kind of component is. And also what you're gonna notice for both of us is I have my monitor pulled up, Chuck has his second device, and we're gonna be tagging into some different research here, pulling from these different things. I'm looking at the National Institute of Health right now. One of the things, the journals I pulled up was the pros and cons of some popular extreme weight loss diets. So I'm gonna reference that throughout this, looking at low carb, high fat diets, i.e. the keto style, and then looking at some of the comparisons there, looking at some of the data points, the side effects, but ultimately, for any one of these, going back to why they don't work, I think it comes back down to that sustainability. And then that's why when we talk about the webinars we have going on, our Never Diet Again, the 3 keys to sustainability, you can check out that below. It's free. We have the next one, September 23rd at 8 p.m. And then we have the next course starting on the 26th. And that's what it's all about. But with that being said, so Chuck, let's break down again, going to why they don't work. We've got sustainability. Okay, let's get into a little bit more of the nitty gritty with it. And like from your perspective on keto, like I've pretty much done every, I think, nutritional protocol except carnivore. But from your keto experience, let's look at that. Like what at the end of those 2 years, did you feel what made it not sustainable for you specifically?
Well, listen, keto, obviously a higher fat, very low carb, moderate protein diet. And honestly, after the amount of training that I do, I need more carbohydrates in my diet. So carbs aren't the enemy, and that's what we have to put in our mind. The wrong carbs or excess carbs could be the enemy. If we're combining a heavy amount of excessive carbohydrates in our diet with a lot of fats in our diet, that could be a negative effect on our body. But moderate levels of carbohydrates, proteins, fats, you got to dial in your macronutrients and find out what's right for your body. Listen, we all go into ketosis every single night. If we don't eat immediately before going to bed, all ketosis is our body is processing fats through our liver into ATP. So when we don't eat a lot of carbohydrates or sugars, or let's say we go to dinner, we have dinner and we have a moderate amount of carbohydrates and sugars, and then like maybe we go for a walk, an after dinner walk, and we burn through all of those carbohydrates and sugars, and that forms into glucose, and that glucose forms into ATP, and we get that energy from our body, but we deplete our glycogen levels in our body. Then we go to bed, we're fasting, and then our body converts the fat into energy through ketosis. Everybody goes into ketosis at night if we're not devouring an entire gallon of ice cream before we go to bed, which I don't recommend. Mike, put your hand down. I don't recommend doing that. But that's all the keto diet is. Now, the keto diet, when you're on a keto diet, a lot of people say you got to be under a certain amount of carbohydrates. I've heard everything from you got to be under 100 grams of carbs, you got to be under 25 grams of carbs. It's all over the place. It all depends on your levels. Now, females tend to not do really well on ketosis, sustainability wise, because of menstruation cycles. You're going to need carbohydrates to support your female hormone menstruation cycle. If you deplete all your carbohydrates, you're going to find out that your hormone levels are going to be completely imbalanced. So that's why ketosis and the keto diet are not a very sustainable diet for females. It usually works really well for men over 40. I'm a guy over 40 years old. Now, I did it for about 2 years, had great success with it, but again, not sustainable for a healthy, balanced lifestyle, especially for somebody who's working out and as active as I am. That's my opinion. Other people will probably say.
Hey, so there's a few things that I think interestingly, like as you're touching on it, it's jumping out at me, and even at looking at the National Institute of Health. So I want to actually cite this for you guys, because sometimes people say like, all right, that sounds good. I'm talking about a research study, but I know honestly, we don't get as many questions about like what exact journal is, but for those, the rare few of you out there that either want to check it yourself, or I've had a few clients recently talking to them saying, hey, I love that stuff. Like, I just want to check it out. Not to question you, but more to dig into it. So I will provide that. So it's going to be the pros and cons of some popular extreme weight loss styles, the name of the actual journal from November 2018 on the National Institute of Health. And it just from going through it, you touched on it, their number, they're looking at 100 grams of calories or less is that keto low carb style. And then the bigger thing that jumps out to me is they kind of use the acronym VLCD, so very low caloric diet or very low calorie diet. And I think no matter what the fad diet is, or even the crash style diet, it all comes back down to they're trying to, like, again, lower calories at the end of the day. And it's not as simple as calories in versus calories out, but that is a very important component of it. And I think that's when it comes down to these kind of fad diets. It's like, okay, when you're doing ketosis, from my experience, it's a lot easier to stay in a lower caloric state or consumption and a calorie deficit, because you're limiting out some of the foods that you're going to enjoy, your bread, all these things. If you're so used to eating that, you're going to be in a calorie deficit or be taking in less calories just because of the restriction in the amount of foods that you're going to eat. Now, it's also very well possible to eat higher calories and fats and things that will put you over there. And I think to your point, Chuck, going into your macros, but at the end of the day, even if we like, that's why like when you have higher carbs, you can be in a calorie surplus. It's very easy to eat a lot of carbs and fats when you're going in excess. But there's another National Institute of Health you guys can look at, carbohydrates and performance. And that has been shown to be, I think, the most credible and recent one, at least from what I've seen, on carb feeding and the impact it has on performance. So even if, to your point, after 40, yes, this can be beneficial, but what's the goals and the priority from sustainability? We've talked about other podcasts, You like pizza, Chuck. I like pizza. I like pasta. We're Italian. We're going to eat some yummy foods that are going to be a little bit more carbohydrate dense, even when we're finding maybe the cauliflower versions, or we're going to the like lentil pastas and whatnot. It's still going to have carbohydrates involved, and you can do other things. And again, at the end of the day, I think it's that sustainability and being able to keep the calories in check.
Right. And there's also, if you don't want to do something like the keto diet where you're on a lower carb intake, there's carb timing or carb cycling that you can do. But again, it all depends on what your number one, your goal is, and number two, what your body composition is, which defines what your macronutrients are for your body. So there's a bunch of different variables that you have to dig into before you can go out and say, I'm going to try this fad diet or I'm going to try that fad diet. You can't just jump into it feet first without doing your research. So definitely, if you're thinking about doing any type of fad diet, which I don't highly recommend to do research before getting into it. You could be an athlete. You could be, a runner. You could just, an activist, somebody who just likes to go work out. It depends on what your activity levels are. And ultimately what your goals are. So don't just jump into a fad diet. That's why, honestly, in my opinion, fad diets aren't the way to go. Again, they're not sustainable, in my opinion. I've tried plenty of them. Again, I think, Mike, you said you've tried a lot of them too. The only one you haven't tried is the carnivore diet. I'm kind of in the same boat. I've tried paleo, I've tried Atkins, I've tried keto, I've tried all these different ones. And I've had moderate success pretty much on every single one of them. But again, I've plateaued while I've been on every single one of them. And then I've had to change up how I approach those diets. And honestly, the best thing that ultimately I found that works for me is to do a cleanse every 3 months. That's why I like doing the 28-day challenge every 3 months, dialing in my macronutrients and really trying to stick to those macronutrients. Now, Mike, I want to ask you a quick question because I've been doing some research on 2 devices. There's 2 breathable devices. One is called and another one is called the Lumen. The Lumen device pretty much hacks your metabolism, which will tell you what you're burning at what particular time of the day and what works best for you, whether you're burning carbohydrates or whether you're burning fats. And the other one is the Biosense device, which is pretty much a ketosis kind of device. It'll read whether or not you're in ketosis, if you're in good levels of ketosis. So I'm thinking about checking out this Lumen device, but a friend of ours is a partner in Biosense, so he's been in my ear about Biosense. But these are kind of devices where you can actually kind of hack your metabolism and kind of see where you're at and what works best for you and your body type. What's your thought on those?
Yeah, I just pulled both of them up. I'm familiar with Lumen. I've seen advertising for that. I haven't heard as much about Biosense, but I like the idea for both of those things. And I think anytime you can add a tool to your toolbox to be able to collect data, to be able to measure it. So there's always that expression, if you can't measure it and track it, you can't change it, whether it's your weight, your body fat, body composition, your muscle tissue, whatever, your strength, your ketone levels, whatever that is. When it comes to nutrition, that's why I've seen the commercials for Lumen, and I think Biosense is in that same category of being able to say, hey, I'm in this right area. The thing I like about that, but I also am somewhat hesitant about, maybe is the best way to put it, is being able to look at the algorithms that they're using to be able to have that information. There's a lot of smart tech, so I don't think it can be wrong, but I like the idea of being able to say, all right, based on that, everyone's going to be able to see, hey, post-workout, like, honestly, from your idea, Chuck, this is something that we've talked about a while ago that I did on an actual Amazon stream. And if you guys are interested in that, we have both mine and Ashley's Amazon streams you guys can check out. We dig into like products and all these things. We're trying to get Chuck on the Amazon stuff too, so you can drop knowledge on people in another platform, in another capacity, but just piece by piece. The point is, I did a workout. I did part of our 8-week to shred workout. I was in week 3, and I believe this one was the leg day workout. And then right afterwards, I went into the kitchen to do another stream on Amazon, looking on the nutritional side, a post-workout shake, getting very specific into the macros that work for me, especially after a leg day workout, while also trying to lower body fat and maintain my lean muscle tissue. So I think being able to say, hey, we just had a really hard glycogen depleting workout. Your body is needing to replenish those things, being able to leverage those choices, or on maybe a less active day, being able to say, hey, like, I just went for a walk with the girls, putting them to bed. I didn't work out today. Today might be a great day from a metabolic flexibility standpoint to increase fat, keep the carbs a little bit lower, and then maybe leverage a little bit more on the fasting window. So I think having tools to indicate that to you becomes really valuable.
Right. Right. And that's why I'm like kind of doing a lot more research on these two devices. I may order one of them, if not both of them, and kind of play around with them and kind of hack into my metabolism to see and toy around with what I can do and find out which device is better. And then we can talk about that on another podcast. But let's get back into what, instead of crash diets or fad diets, what would be your biggest component of what actually works for you, Mike?
Yeah, because then there's this other side of it too. And like looking even at our original journal for the National Institute of Health, looking at these different styles of like, so we have the low carb, high fat, and we have low fat, high carb, and looking at the differences there. Then, there's the Mediterranean style, which is probably one of those that like, if we put it in the fad diet style, that's the one that I think could be the most sustainable. But then if we go down a little bit further on this article, looking at the balanced weight loss style diets and the principles behind it and being able to look at the impact of that, the bigger thing to me is, again, balancing out macros so that we're not, anytime you restrict something in general, whether it's carbohydrates, whether it's fats, whether it's sugars, and I'm not saying sugars are good, by the way. Like, I'm not saying we should be like loading up on sugars or alcohol or anything. Anytime you're saying, hey, this one thing is evil, remove it altogether, there's just higher percentage chance of failure. So to that sustainability thing, to me, it's about being able to leverage, hey, these are the foods and that's going back to when we go through week 1 of our 28-day course, being able to eliminate a lot of foods, being able to eliminate pretty much anything your body could have a reaction to, and then start to reintroduce them over the following 3 weeks and saying, hey, being aware, is my body reacting to dairy? Is my body reacting to gluten? Is my body reacting to higher carbohydrates? Is it reacting to these higher sugar intakes? And then being able, to me, the big principle is looking at our goals. So this is a task I want to give everyone right now, an actionable task. Write down your goals. Write down to what you were talking about, Chuck. What's important to you? What do you want to have happen? Is it you want to go to Jiu-Jitsu Worlds? Do you want to just be able to, lose a little bit of weight so that your doctor is saying, hey, you're in a healthy BMI zone? Is it you want to look in the mirror and feel really good about what you're seeing there? Hopefully that's everyone is kind of getting to that point. We've talked about that on other podcasts, but writing down that goal and then being able to understand, okay, what do I not want to sacrifice? And then I like to make a list. Okay, my goals, cool. Now, these are the things I know I can't live without. Chuck, you already know what I'm going to say. I can't live without my peanut butter cups and my mangoes. So, and we've talked about this numerous times over, so I know that's an important aspect to me. So I dial in my goals and I match that up. So instead of going to Reese's and store-bought options, I like to just modify a few things to saying, hey, let's control the ingredients. Like we've talked about, again, making our own pizza. So I think looking at the goals, saying, hey, I'm going to match my overall intake and portions to that. You don't have to necessarily count calories, but being able to find what you're taking in and what you don't want to lose because you enjoy that. And one of the easiest ways to me to audit myself is taking pictures of my food. You don't have to count calories that way. You don't have to look at portion sizes. Everything, if you're taking pictures, you can get a really good idea of like, whoa, I had 3 plates of dinner tonight. You don't even need to count calories to know that could be too much in portions to be able to figure out, all right, I have to dial that back. Or I love pizza, for example. Like there's a pizza we get here in town that it has steak on it and balsamic vinaigrette and some peppers and onions and mushrooms. So now instead of we always getting that one, we're going to make it at home now, like what you talk about, Chuck. So that's my long-winded kind of rant at some of the things that I think are important into breaking that down to the balance is looking at the goals, understanding the why even behind those goals, then saying, hey, audit myself with taking pictures of what we're eating, looking at the things I don't want to give up, that I know if I lose this piece, it's not going to be sustainable. And then at the end of the day, matching those things to create a sustainable plan and swapping some things out so that you have more control over it at home.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm drawing a blank as to who it was, but there is a health coach on social media, and he's pretty respectable, but I can't remember what his name is. He loves to live by the motto, if you restrict something out of your diet, you're going to fail every time. So rather than restricting it, if you have a craving for something, what this health coach is saying is go out. If you have a craving for cookies, go eat 25 cookies and just get it out of the way, and you won't have that craving for quite some time. You know, I'm not a big proponent on that. What I'd like to go and have everybody go out and put in the back of their mind is, listen, if you have a craving for something, if you're eating clean 90% of the time and you have a craving for something, whether it be peanut butter cups and mangoes, listen, I'm going to tell you right now, I love rainbow cookies. I love them. They're like, yeah, I love rainbow cookies, but I restrict it from my diet. But occasionally I'll go out and I'll have myself a rainbow cookie. Is it every week? No, it's definitely not every week. Is it once a month? No, it's definitely not once a month. But I don't restrict myself to the point where if I'm really, really craving a rainbow cookie, I'll go have a rainbow cookie and I'll consider that a cheat meal. If I know I'm eating clean 90% of the time and I haven't had a cheat meal throughout the course of the week and I'm craving something, whether it be a rainbow cookie or a slice of pizza, I'll go out and I'll have it, but I'll do it within moderation. And I'll know that if I've eaten terribly throughout the course of the week and I have to dial it back in, I can't have more bad choices because I've already had a lot of bad choices throughout the course of the week. I need to identify that, hey, listen, I need to dial it back. I need to get back to eating healthy and eating clean. And I'll do that for a certain period of time, whether it be a week or whether it be 2 weeks, and then identify to myself that, wow, I've really done well for the past 2 weeks. I deserve a cheat meal. And we're all deserving of a cheat meal. Again, it's within moderation, and there has to be balance. You have to be the one to identify, A, I want to eat healthy and clean, and B, I'm going to do it for a certain amount of time and give myself a goal. And once I reach that goal, I'll have myself a treat within moderation and within reason.
Now I'm going to like just pretend to be the audience here for a second, because so I'm going to just, but Chuck, I saw X, Y, and Z person on TikTok or on Instagram, and they said I should be eating Pop-Tarts before my work. This is one example. Or they eat, or this is one of my favorite things to hear is, well, X, Y, Z person eats ABC. I'm like, okay, that's cool. Now, are you X, Y, and Z person? No.
Right.
So if they're telling you,
you don't know what X, Y, and Z is doing. X, Y, and Z could be doing a 4-hour workout, some crazy workout, could be a professional athlete, could be fasting for 2 days straight before they eat a Pop-Tart before going into the gym. You don't know what X, Y, and Z is doing. And honestly, I've said it many times in this podcast, everyone is different. There's not a single person out there that their body composition isn't different from the person sitting next to them. And if my body comp is definitely different from Mike's body composition. So that means we're going to have 2 different caloric intake goals and allowances for the day, and our macronutrients are going to be different from each other. Did you just flex on me a second ago?
I just got hyped and I did flex. I will be honest, but I was hoping it was going to trigger you to flex so that we can make that comparison to showcase the difference in obvious body type differentials there. Like, look at Chuck's arms and upper body comparatively to this bad boy. Come on, I'm not ready, but you got to hit us anyway.
You got to do it at the same time. You got to do it. Ready?
So look at those bigs on those biceps comparatively to these long kind of spaghetti boxy arms. Now, I'm going to be able to reach and have all those other components. So the point of saying that, to highlighting on your point, Chuck, even to the Pop-Tart thing, like there's different reasons why even people will say that on social media. Yes, you want to get some glycogen coming in, the impact on insulin, all this other shit. But again, the goal is they just crushed a crazy probably workout, or they're about to crush a very high demand workout where they need to replenish glycogen to do that. If you're going to walk for 20 minutes on the treadmill, you don't need to be taking in a Pop-Tart or whatever. That's just one aspect of it.
Nobody needs to be eating Pop-Tarts ever. Kellogg's or whoever makes them. Make your own Pop-Tart. There's a healthier version of making Pop-Tarts out there.
We'll have a banana.
Well, yeah. Just think of all the preservatives and chemicals and nastiness that are in sugar that are in Pop-Tarts. Rant over, continue, Mike.
So that's also a great point too. So I want to highlight that for a second, because there is someone out there, there's an author, and by no means is this person and a nutritionist, and I don't actually agree with a lot of this stuff, if any of the other stuff they put out, but Michael Pollan is an author that put out something, and this was an important statement that I always kind of kept with me because I like the perspective on it, is if you want to have a pie, cherry pie or something, you want to have a Pop-Tart, you just touch on it, instead of going out and buying it, like that's what I'm talking about with the Reese's, instead of going out and buying them, I make my own homemade protein peanut butter cups, or make your own version of it. Because guess what? By the time you actually make it 2 hours later, the craving might be gone. You might not even want it. And then if you still want it, great, you earned it. And the likelihood of you doing that on a more frequent basis is going to go down. Now, for my bakers out there, for those that are like, dude, I'll make cookies every single day, that's kind of a different aspect. And we can dial in those components of it and say, all right, like I have a few clients coming to mind. I want to give you guys some different extreme examples. I want to shoot it to you, Chuck. Because again, we not only want to look at these crash and fad diets and looking why they don't work, but offering up how to basically on the mirror side of it, how to make it work for you. Let's take these actionable steps. So we talked about some of those, from writing out your goals, from auditing yourself, taking pictures of it, knowing what you can't live without. Now let's look at those things that you don't want to live without, whether it's your, for me, we talked about it, for you, what we talked about, and then saying, all right, now let's make those ingredients. And now let's look at going back to our goals. And I'm gonna give a shout out to Johnny Buck really quick. He kind of dialed it. Like, listen, Johnny Buck doesn't need me as a nutrition coach. He doesn't need us to help him out. He could do it himself. The bigger point here, and I'm gonna mention, is two things. One, he's a smart man, and he's like, listen, there's one less thing I got to worry about. The best in the world, me and Chuck know this as well. We don't want to worry about it, so we reference to each other to dig into programs or planning or nutrition. We don't write our own stuff for the most part because we don't want to. It's one less thing we got to worry about. The other side is Johnny's goals are, he's going to Worlds in a few weeks. He's going to dominate. He doesn't have to make weight. He's going to be at the ultra weight class, the highest weight class. He doesn't have to worry about making weight. So it's all about performance for him. So I'm not worried as much about his calories or even his sugar intake as well. Mostly from the sources are going to be fruit-based, but I don't care if he's eating 60, 70, 80 grams of sugar in a day, as long as we're matching with some other things there. So the point of me pulling that up is going back. If you're having a hard time, there's another client, I won't give you their name because this is a little bit more private, but just as an example, they're struggling, honestly. They won't even start our nutrition course because they can't even get to like day one. And my point to them, and this is what we're working on right now, is going back to your goal, going back to your why. You said you want to do this, but based on your actions, I don't know. We have to look at, do you really want this? What do you really want? And then if that is what you want, we have to make your choices match with your actions. You got to basically put your money where your mouth is, as the old school expression goes.
Yeah, and listen, honestly, there's a lot of people in their mind, they see themselves as one thing and they think they're ready, and then we start working with them. Or listen, a lot of people come to me and say, hey, Chuck, I'm ready. And I ask them I give them homework. I give them 3 things to do. And if they can't do the 3 things I'm asking them to do for a solid week, I know they're not ready. And then I'll go back to them and I'll say, listen, you're not ready. Until you can commit to these 3 things, which are very minor things, I know you're not ready for the journey. It doesn't mean that down the road they won't be ready for the journey, but it means that they're not ready for it right now. Listen, there was plenty of times when I was in my professional career, which is still in my professional carear, but when I was very focused when I was very focused on international travel, when I was traveling the world, I wanted and I saw myself as wanting to get healthier. But I just didn't have the time to do it. So if somebody had said to me, hey, Chuck, I'm going to give you these 3 things to do. Can you do them in a week? I know I wouldn't have been able to do them. So you have to be ready to make the commitments. If you see yourself and you want to get better, you want to get lean, you want to start hitting that goal, you have to be ready to commit to yourself and to make that commitment to your coach, your time, everything. I have a client right now who was doing ordering food from a food service. And then ultimately I was concerned about it because he was like, you know what? I'm not going to order food from the meal prep service anymore. And he goes, I think I'm going to meal prep on my own. And I was concerned as his coach to be like, really? Are you ready to do that? And he genuinely surprised me and started doing a lot of meal prepping on his own. That's a guy who's ready to make that commitment. There's a lot of things that need to change in order for you to start your fitness and nutrition journey. You just have to be able to make those commitments.
And kind of going back to like the success and failure aspects, you touched on a really important piece, is being not only intuitive with yourself and honest with yourself of what you're prepared for, and being okay that, hey, maybe now isn't the time to make all of this change. And kind of adjusting that goal. But then at the end of the day, going back to, well, what can I do? What is the realistic step right now? And then being okay with that. Like, I'm going to be honest with you guys right now. This is not on the nutrition side, but on the training side, but it makes sense here is my goal right now is consistently, I hit jujitsu consistently once a week for a month straight. Now I'm going up to twice a week for a month straight, and then progressively building.
You can try all you want. It's still going to happen. It's still going to happen.
Chuck is coming for me, guys. Just so you guys know, when I see him, the first thing is gonna be, we're gonna bust out no matter where it is. It's gonna be a grappling session.
The parking lot. Go down.
So that's why I always like to, if you guys ever see me, that's why you're going to see me in basically t-shirts and shorts or sweatpants, because of that very variable. But even to that point, I want to give you guys, again, going back to this actionable idea of like, all right, Mike, this all sounds good. Chuck, that sounds great. I want to make this realistic, but you mentioned like making these minor adjustments and these minor details. I still need a little bit more. Okay. So I want to give you guys a principle, a fundamental principle that I think applies across the board, except for the few like the Johnny Bucks of the world that are not trying to lose body fat, that are maybe you want to put weight on, or you only care about performance. This may not apply to you, but everyone else, I would say 80% of the people, if not 90, 95% of the people listening, you're going to want to lower the caloric density, lower the amount of calories per serving, increase the fiber, increase the protein. And while doing that, if you can lower the sugar, that's bonus. I'm not even going to worry about that right now. Not saying sugar is good, but lower calories, increase fiber, increase protein. I'll give you guys quick things on why that's important. And then Chuck, I'm going to kick it to you. One, we went back to this point of when you're lowering calories, you're going to hopefully be in a calorie deficit or not be taking as many calories. So you're likely going to be losing body fat throughout the process. Two, when you're increasing fiber and increasing your protein, you're going to increase the chance that you're going to stay satisfied and full from the foods that you're taking in. So the likelihood, again, going back to calories, you're not going to be eating as many calories. And then number three, the actual satisfaction you'll get, because then usually you'll be able to eat more of something. And I go back to these popsicles I have for the kids. I use these small popsicle molds, and I use them for myself too. I can get 4 popsicles that are total 100 calories. So 25 calories each with one shake that I make that's high in protein, high in fiber. My kids love it because they feel like they're eating ice cream and they have desserts. I like it because I feel like I just had 4 popsicles and it's 100 calories. It's a win-win there. So those 3 things, being able to, again, control calories, feeling satisfied, and psychologically feeling good about it are massive wins that I can't recommend for you guys enough. But now, after I went on that little bit of a rant, Chuck, I want to kick it to you, either to dig on some other options there that work for you, or your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I think that's the best advice. If anybody takes anything away from this podcast, that's the best advice.
Would you say 100%?
100%, Mike. And to piggyback on what Mike said, the 2 things Mike says all the time, 100% and piggybacking on that. Just dialing it back. So what Mike said was increase your fiber, right? Increase your protein. We're going to lower our sugar contents, right? But people are like, God damn, I got to research what fiber is, what protein is, all this other stuff. Listen, look at what you're doing real quick. If you don't know where to start, look at what you're doing. Let's take a look at breakfast, for example. If we have a cup of coffee every single morning and we put milk and sugar and creamer. So if we're using those flavored creamers that are high in sugar, all that stuff.
It's pumpkin spice latte season right now, PSL season.
I talked about this on a previous podcast. Seriously, anybody who's going to get pumpkin spice lattes, just go into Starbucks. So mad right now. Go into Starbucks and ask them how many grams of sugar are in each pump of that liquid that they stick into that coffee, and your mind is going to be blown. And they put like 8 freaking pumps of that stuff in there. There's like 70 grams of sugar. There's got to be like 70 grams of sugar in one coffee. I'm surprised people aren't running down the street like lunatics, but everybody's addicted to these things, so they're used to it. Anyway, sorry, you upset me with that.
We just pause, and also, I don't know if you guys noticed that the thumbs up that came on the screen, I don't even know if you meant to push a button and hit the thumbs up, or if it was just like gesture recognition and it just gave you a thumbs up, but that was amazing.
No, I didn't even see a thumbs up.
Yeah, on my screen, a thumbs up just happened, like a little like emoticon thumbs up, because you were just getting so hyped, it just gave you a thumbs up.
I was upset about this. But listen, let's dial it back. Let's look at what we're having for breakfast. If we're having a cup of coffee with milk, with sugar, with all this other stuff in there, dial it back. Instead of milk, let's use half and half. That's a little bit better. There's less sugar in the half and half, or maybe even
I like almond milk, unsweetened almond milk, unsweetened anything maybe would be.
Oat milk. I've been putting a lot of oat milk in my coffee, and it doesn't get as light as regular milk, but whatever. Oat milk's great. Anyway, let's look at our coffee. Let's look at what we're eating. If we're just eating a muffin every day, or if we're going to like Dunkin' Donuts and devouring a couple donuts, we're missing protein. And we want to make sure we're having protein at every meal. That's first off. So let's look at what we're eating, and there's changes that can be made. Let's look at lunch. Let's look at dinner. Are we having soda at meals? Let's cut out the soda. Okay, let's just drink seltzer water. And then ultimately, let's just drink water. Okay, and there's different options. Hold on a second. Let me see if I have one.
Chuck's going to show you guys, and even piggybacking two aspects that you touched on, Chuck. Now the question is, well, how much protein should I have? I say start with 10 to 15 grams. Anytime you're putting food into your body, that's like one met, which is low-balling it big time. But that's super low-balling it. Two is when it comes to like sodas and stuff, because I was a big, like, I love diet soda, believe it or not. So what I would do is I would just then say, instead of removing it altogether, maybe that's not realistic for you, start replacing it half.
Right, replace it. So this is, my wife just bought these. These
yes,
things,
Zevia.
I've never had these things ever because I don't drink soda. And it's been years and years since I've actually drank soda. And she's like, did you try one of these things? And I was like, no, it's clear. First off, doesn't have artificial coloring.
There's no dyes.
There's no dyes in it. It literally has carbonated water, stevia leaf, natural flavors, caffeine, and citric acid. That's what's in here.
Was that four?
There's
4 ingredients. Did I count that right?
2, 3. There's tartaric acid in there too. So there's 5 ingredients. Okay, so there's healthy alternatives out there. We don't have to go out and be like, oh, I'm gonna cut out soda completely. There's a healthy alternative right here. I'm not going to continue to drink them because I don't like soda, but listen, there's always healthy alternatives out there. Let's take a look at what we're eating. If we're eating a sandwich every day on regular white bread or a bagel sandwich
with mayo,
let's use a wrap. There's so many different options you can do. So if you don't want to go really dial it in and increase your fiber and increase your protein and do this, look at what you're doing and make minor adjustments. I'm going to put this back because I'm not going to drink it.
Boom, I just got excited. I had to smack my hand. So I think with all that, we've not only touched on, again, what a crash diet is, what the fad diets are, why, again, they're failing you, giving you guys actionable things to, again, just make swaps in a variety of ways. And I don't want to overwhelm you guys with too much because we could keep going on and on and on. And that's where I think also from a fad diet perspective, why they fail and where the adjustments is. Fad diets change everything all at once. And that's not sustainable. So in the sustainable sense and where the flip side of it is, change one thing. Pick one of the things we talked about and just do that one thing and then build upon that over time. And that's where you're going to really find success. And if you guys want more help, again, that's why we have we put this podcast out. We have our contact information below. Email us, reach out to us on social media. Chuck and myself, we respond. We put up questions in our stories. You guys can reach out to us there. And being able to then, we have the webinar on September 23rd. You can have that. We have the nutrition course starting September 26th. We have our booty builder series for the workout side of things. We have our coaching programs. We have our fitness hall. We have all these great things. And we have that information below from everything from free all the way up to our higher investment things that you guys, whatever makes the most sense for you. But you guys have the ability to do it. Just change that one thing at a time. And having said that, I'm going to stop talking. Chuck, I want to get your final thoughts and then we'll kind of leave it at that.
Everybody's got different levels of commitment, how much they want to spend on their health and fitness, how much time they want to invest in it. Everybody has different levels. I myself personally, I kind of go off the deep end. I spend a lot on supplements, spend a lot on coaching. I'm addicted to it. So that's what my hobby is. Everybody's got different levels. Number one, find out what your goal is. What are you comfortable with? Number two, find out what your commitment level is, both financially and time investment. And then ultimately dial it in and make those commitments and stick with it. Because ultimately, don't you want to feel better? Don't you want to live longer, be healthier, be happier? Because everything dials into it. So if we're working out, we're releasing endorphins, we're feeling better. If we're losing weight, we're starting to feel better. We're starting to feel more mobile. We're starting to feel more agile. There's all different types of goals and levels out there. Find what your commitment level is, dial it in, and hit your goal.
That's just, we gotta leave it at that, y'all. Chuck, I gotta give you a high five through the phone just because like that just, I'm amped up right now. Before I even go to bed, I'm gonna have to like go for another walk.
You really got me hot on that Starbucks coffee, man.
Dude, I saw. I was like, I'm gonna have to start ducking some bows here through the phone. I'm seeing red and stuff.
I was about to get on a plane and come find you.
It's like, don't you even mention those lattes? But with that being said, y'all, again, you guys got plenty of action. We have our final thoughts. You know where to find us, all this good stuff. You can check it below. We'll see you on the next podcast next week. And then we better be seeing you guys on that webinar. Even just to, again, deliver and drive home value for you guys, and we'll have more actionable steps after that. So I'm going to bust out my drink. And also, I'm drinking seltzer here, by the way. LaCroix, however you pronounce that bad boy. That's also an option I like that doesn't have caffeine, giving you some flavors.
Fancy.
Cheers, everybody, and cheers, Chuck.
Cheers, all. Stay healthy.